Pearl Harbor is that, touchstone of history. It's where World War II began for the United States. And so the surroundings of this site, which is memorials, in particular the most important of the three that we have under our guidance, the USS Arizona Memorial, which was dedicated in 1962, becomes that temporal touchstone for visitors to come back to this place where it all happened. The fact that the whole island is the battlefield and the airfields were struck even before Pearl Harbor kind of is a misnomer for the term Pearl Harbor. But, what resonates in people's minds even to this day is this whole idea of remember Pearl Harbor and America suddenly struck by surprise on a quiet Sunday in Hawaii. And so people of all countries, in particular Americans and Japanese, come here to almost touch that history and turn they're touched by it. When it comes to the Philippines, the Philippines is quite a different story. And the Philippines has General Douglas MacArthur there working with the Philippine soldiers and their government and American soldiers, American Army Air Force there. And it's supposed to be so strong that the Japanese wouldn't dare attack it. But it was not in full organizational capability. And the fact that an opportunity to hit the Japanese air bases before they hit us was lost, and our planes were caught on the ground after being up in the air for some time. The debacle at Clark Field is one that just boggles the mind, considering that Pearl Harbor had happened just hours before. There was ample warning in that case, and we still got caught. And with our Air Force crippled, the defense of the island that now was magnified, and the Japanese had formed a very strong force with full intentions to capture the Philippines, and with it, the kind of strategic and economic power that they desired. That's what the whole idea of their invasion across the Pacific, which, when you consider that, one of the greatest invasions in human history, they were able to invade all of Southeast Asia and part of the Central Pacific within weeks. This is all under their control. The Philippines will fall in April, but by that time the United States is still reeling from disaster after disaster. The only spark of hope happens in April 18th, and when the president just so determined to strike back, listens to some what considered was a cockamamie idea of taking American carriers to Japan and striking the Japanese homeland, and that's the famous Doolittle raid. But it is a time of great despair, and 1941-42, that's 6 months that are after it, it is just incalculable to the people in Washington that our commands are just being shattered by the Japanese juggernaut, and at the same time trying to balance that out with what's happening with the Germans in Europe. So it's 1942 and 43 are these desperate years that the war hung in the balance. And by 1944, the road back to Tokyo is well underway, and object of contention and object of controversy. Meetings that took place right here with Nimitz, MacArthur, and the president was the whole idea of what islands, what territories had the priority. And of course, MacArthur was very, very stringent about his opinion, and he had already made a pledge, and that was, I shall return. And of course, by that time, we are starting to get rumors of what is going on in some of those islands with our prisoner. In particular, know what's going on at Guam, and we're now finding out about Philippines and what had happened in the surrender after it. It is already a bitter war. It has turned to a war without mercy, and the idea and the hatred at that time of the Jap, as they called them, was almost unfathomable today. Both sides were not surrendering, and Japanese were not surrendering. And if they could take 20 Marines, that's what they were going to do. So the fighting becomes embittered, it becomes racial, it becomes personal. And what fuels probably a fire already raging is treatment of prisoners and what has happened to them, because they're also finding out about Wake Island as well. So you have the idea of this inhuman treatment, the kind of butchery that was involved towards prisoners of war. And we're outraged, and we're in no mood. And so what people often forget is about the war in the Pacific is that the hatred that was enjoined towards the enemy, both in particular the Japanese and the Nazis, and people forget the fascists of Italy. It was real, it was genuine, and it was a fight to the finish. There was not, the United States had made it clear, any countries they were involved in, unconditional surrender. People need to understand what unconditional surrender means. And in that light, they should not have been surprised that ultimately it would end in the ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That war was not only a war of emotion, but it was also a war of strategy and finishing off what they considered the job. And when they had that ultimate weapon, there was little doubt that the president and his advisors were going to use that. Now, some people today are extremely horrified by the use of that, but they don't live in that time. And living in that time and understanding the gold stars that sprinkle neighborhoods, what it was really happening on the American home front, what was happening with the GI in Europe and in the Pacific was one of absolute bitterness towards an enemy that they felt from December 7th on had struck them by a sneak attack, surprise attack, and were not worthy of honor because they showed no honor. And so you combine all of the news that's coming out of the Pacific, the bitterness of the fighting, the showing of American dead at Tarawa for the first time, you have a nation that's outraged, and rightfully so. And so when we look back today, we don't have that emotion tied to it unless we talk to a veteran, unless we talk to someone that was there and try to understand that temperament and fervor, not only to win the war, but to win the war in a fashion that would make it safe from all kinds of tyrants that they felt they were fighting in Europe and in the Pacific. The critical part of the story, what was our capability? And unfortunately for those poor men, that will be the largest surrender of American forces in our history. There's no way to relieve them. And that was the hard story of that. The hard story for Wake Island, the hard story for Guam, the hard story for the Philippines. And the British find themselves in the same problem with their extension of their empire at Hong Kong and Singapore. It is just that there is no way to get to the Far East because an enemy so formidable is out there, and we don't have the forces to extend that relief. I've been here since summer of 1984. I've met hundreds of World War II veterans and their families. These were young kids. They were in their 1920s. They were young. And they came out here at Pearl Harbor, saw their homes shot out from underneath them. Their ship was their home. Some of the aviators that flew here through Hickam were at Clark Field. They had landed here in Hawaii. This was their last spot of America, and found their misfortune and death in the Philippines. So people who come here on vacation and come to this memorial are confronted with a very difficult truth, that America changed that day. In my view, modern American history began on that day. Everything that you and I are today is a result of their sacrifice. The dynamic changes, both socially, politically, and economically, all occur because of a war that America doesn't want, that the world should have averted, but it unfolds. Imagine how much we changed, how much America changed, not only for the promise of true democracy to all, but the ability to lead the world in peace.